WP, not so much a question. I just want to hear any stories he has about Carl Gotch.
Carl Gotch was way, way before my time. My relationship with Carl Gotch was, I just heard stories secondhand, never met him. But I do know that he didn't like the wrestling that he called modern day wrestling. And that modern day wrestling was back in the 70s. He didn't like that. He didn't like Ric Flair. He didn't like any of those guys who actually put show business in it. He didn't like that because if it wasn't his style, he didn't understand it. But Carl Gotch was a great what we call shooters and hookers. And I think you asked me who was the toughest guy in professional wrestling I ever met. Did you ask me that?
I don't think so. I may not have done. Someone tell me if I did, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, I'll get back to it. But back in those days, you had a couple of shooters, Jim Londos, not even a big guy. He's like 180 pounds, but he knew how to wrestle. And another guy was called John Foley, which was an Englishman. You ever hear about him?
Yes. Was he?
He came.
Did he go to Stampede at one point? Or was that J.R. Foley,
Yeah,
a different man?
No, I was his partner one time. We went to actually a territory named Knoxville. We were up there, and John, 1,000 jokes and 1,000 ways to tie you up. I remember a guy, a promoter that John was working for, and John, he would smoke all the time, but cigarettes instead of cigar. And he'd have a mark come up, a fan saying, I could beat this wrestler. He said, okay. He said, I'll give you a try. If you do, I'll let you in the business. Oh, okay. He'd line up 5 guys, but he'd line up the muscle guys. Well, he didn't want to have nothing to do with them, the fan. He'd pick John, smoking a cigarette. I'll take him. Okay. That's the worst pick he could have made. Oh my God. John would go in the ring and he'd tie the guy up and some of them cried, literally cried to be let out of the ring. And the promoter says, well, I give you a shot and you can't even beat the least of these guys. So you do me no good. But there's been a lot of tough guys in wrestling, a lot. But a lot of guys aren't tough in wrestling. They're just tough in fighting. They just know, and they got to be big. I'll tell you a guy, and Brody was tough. Hanson was tough. Abdullah, because, 400 pounds don't want to move, you ain't going to move him. And he had no neck. He just got to duck his head like this. You can't knock him out. You may cut him up a little bit, and that's about it. Haku was probably, I heard, Haku was probably the toughest guy, wrestler, but not in wrestling, just in literal fighting. And I've heard that from a lot of people. So if Haku walks in a room, show him a lot of respect.
I'll give you this one then. John Foley or Danny Hodge?
Oh, I think Danny Hodge. Danny Hodge he was amateur trained, but he knew how to hook. And some of those moves they had they can actually pull your arm out of socket or knee or anything like that. But Danny Hodge legitimately was one of the toughest guys I've ever known, because he was known for the hand grip. First time I met Danny Hodge, I put my hand out and he was smiling the whole time. How you doing, kid? How you doing, kid? I went, yeah, fine, glad to meet you. And he just clamped down on my hand, and now I'm trying to fight back, but he just got stronger. It was like a vice. And finally, I got to the point, I almost went to my knees, and he said, I'm just kidding you, and slapped me on the back and laughed. But he was the guy who used to go to the ring. He would take an apple, and he would squeeze it, and you could see the juice come out of the apple. So that's how tough he was. Danny Hodge was tough, really, really tough.